you want to say the intro?
Yeah. What? Was it a certain one or you just...
Hey guys.
Oh, no, I ain't finna do
Welcome
that.
back
That's
to
you.
another... Okay.
That's you. That's not me. I got you.
Hey guys. Well, oh, are you
No,
ready?
I want to do it.
Oh, you want to do it?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Hey, how y'all doing today? No?
No.
Yo.
No.
What we
It's,
doing?
hey guys. Welcome back to another episode of Outside the Camp podcast.
All right.
And then once we get, like, into the topic, it's always, like, either, like, sit back, grab a coffee, and meet us outside the camp, or get ready to meet us outside the camp. Something like
I
that.
got to say that too?
You usually do.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Outside the Camp. We are your hosts, Will and Destiny.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Good job.
Yeah,
Today.
we definitely, it's going on now. Yeah.
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 You ready?
We on live. We on air.
Okay. On today's episode, I'm feeling a little under the weather. Just a little bit. A lot. But we're going to talk about some really cool stuff today. We're going to talk about kind of like the basis of Outside the Camp. And obviously Outside the Camp is an organization that works on like aiming to reach people that are both lost and that are never lost and have not been lost. That maybe have been hurt by the church, by communities, by Christians, and are navigating through that, which most of us, like, even the most saved believers have been hurt by other Christians. Like, that's just part of the nature of being a human. So we're going to talk about a few things today. So we wanted to talk about a couple things. I got a couple questions put together. I think you did too.
Yeah.
If you did your homework, we'll see. But let's go ahead and jump right into it.
All right. So I think the biggest question was, one of the biggest questions was, what is church hurt?
That's a great question.
Yeah. So what do you think church hurt is?
When I think of church hurt, I think it's like, it can be a lot of different things. I think that people kind of throw a bunch of different things under the label of church hurt. Church hurt can be like extreme scenarios, like the things that I went through with the first church that I was at, where like someone in leadership abuses their power of spiritual like leadership and abuses that relationship. It can also look like pastors mishandling money. It can also look like friends gossiping behind your back. It can look like people lying about things. It can look like this whole life behind the veil of the mega churches where you have like the celebrity pastors that are treated like they're these big famous people instead of just disciples. I could look at a lot of different things. I think the basis premise of like what church hurt is church hurt is things that happen inside of inside of the church that hurt. And I think that there's this common thing now where church hurt becomes like
We're getting comfortable, so
where church hurt goes from like being something that hurt someone to like then they find all these deconstruction podcasts and they start like deconstructing themselves from the church, and oftentimes it leads to isolation from the church. And yeah, I think it's just hurting people.
yeah, that's good.
What do you think?
When I think of church hurt, I think more of someone experiencing an offense, and I would say allowing that offense to control the narrative to where they feel like they don't have a home to go to anymore. So,
Yeah.
I mean, thinking of church hurt, because think about it, we get hurt like through a relationship or like through, someone close to us, but when it's church hurt, it's different. It's a different type of hurt, right? It's it's one of those things where you come to a place where you feel like you're already coming to get the healing you're looking for. You're coming to get the community you're looking for. And we thinking that church is always going to be like this safe space, which it is.
Yeah, it's supposed to be.
It's supposed to be, right?
Yeah.
But then it's like when you encounter a situation that you don't expect. Now think about it, the same situation you would encounter outside of the church, but it happens inside of the church.
Yeah.
So, and when we think of that, we think, well, this is supposed to be a place where I'm supposed to come and get my healing and stuff, but I'm getting hurt, and so I don't expect that. And if it's happening in here, if the same thing happening in here is happening out there, then where can I look to? Where can I go to?
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Yeah, I think when I like went through everything at the first church that I was at, I remember this one profound statement that I said in that time was like, my safe place became the place that I needed saving from. And I remember feeling so like, yes, where do you turn, where do you run, but also like, if the people inside of the church, if God's people hurt me honestly more than the people outside of God's people did, then like, what's the point of church? What's the point of community?
Right.
What's the point? And I spent so many nights like crying out and just being like, Lord, like your people suck. Like they're terrible. Like they're honestly like worse than the world's people. Like I've met so many worldly people that are so nice and so kind and considerate. And I've met so many of your people that are bitter and angry and exclusive and just so many things that don't represent Christ. And so that leads me to another question, which I think was in the list of questions that I had sent you, of like, when we are hurt by the church, then what? What do we do with that?
Yeah. Good question. So when I think about that, of what do we do with that, right? My answer. I'm helping your editing, so
Yeah.
So my answer would be, you honor them, you take your offense to the Lord, and allow Him to work through you in the healing process.
What does that actually look like, though?
Right.
Like to honor them.
Right. To honor them, it's one of those things where it's like, I know the experience I've had with that person, but I still know the good things, and I still know the Lord is using them too. Just like what David was fleeing from Saul, like he was fleeing from Saul, but every opportunity he had to handle Saul in a way of like getting rid of him, like he still honored him. He still took the wise way out. Right? He used the Lord's wisdom to not allow that opportunity to take advantage of the opportunity to where like he can be king, but he knew that it wasn't his time, and the Lord was actually testing him too in those moments. Because I'm studying First and Second Samuel now, and I didn't really realize until I read commentary. And yes, I use commentary because commentary helps. I mean,
It does.
It helps a lot, and it breaks it down to in ways that we really wouldn't think of. But so in studying First Samuel, I was looking and noticing that the Lord was actually testing David too in those times where he was fleeing and the times he had opportunities to kill Saul, right? But he didn't, because how many times is it to where like we get opportunities that we know the Lord has told us something, but we take it upon ourselves to take advantage of that opportunity to make it happen faster, right? If I'm making any sense. And so it was one of those things where David knew it wasn't his time, and he still honored Saul. Even though Saul was evil and wicked, David still honored him in a way of we should honor our leaders today.
Yeah.
And so,
I think the thing that isn't mentioned often in like all the deconstruction and when the churches hurt you and like all of that, is the Lord very clearly addresses what to do when there's conflict in the church. And like essentially church hurt all stems down to a conflict between two people or more than two people. And I think the number one most important thing to do is having a conversation. Like we see in the New Testament, it talks about like if there's problem amongst two of you, like go to each other and talk about it, talk through it. And then like if that doesn't work, then bring in other leadership to be able to have that conversation. And I think that is a really hard thing to do, and most people don't take the time to do that. A church hurts them, or they hear something offensive from the pastors or whatever the case may be, and they just leave the church and leave the community, and like they put themselves in a place of isolation. That's why there's so much church hopping all over in so many cities, but I think that is really prevalent here in Houston. And so you see so much of that because instead of actually having a conversation with our pastors and like questioning and like pressing into that, I think that sometimes we put pastors on such like a pedestal that it feels like we're not able to have a conversation with them because we're just a member of the congregation, we're not important. But the entirety of the gospel is like, if you have said yes to being a pastor and have said yes to shepherding people, like that is our honor and privilege to be able to do that. And so like sometimes it takes the effort of going out, and even the circumstances that I've been in, I've gone and had meetings with those pastors and had meetings with the people that were in those situations, and it was extremely hard and difficult, even just having that and being vulnerable and sharing what hurt me and how I felt about things. And the truth behind like church hurt is like sometimes you'll do that and you'll never get an apology, and that's really hard and really difficult. And I've seen circumstances where I never really got an apology. I've seen circumstances where I got an apology and then was betrayed again after the apology. But I think that in those moments, the number one thing that I remembered and feeling like I may never get an apology, and the Lord's people were betraying me, was like remembering that nobody on this earth has been betrayed by more of God's people than Jesus himself. And so that feeling of being betrayed by my own family or betrayed by like my community, which essentially is my family, like the only person that knows that better than me is Jesus himself.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think the biggest thing that we're supposed to do is go and have conversations and face the uncomfortable, and fight through that. And, you know, we talked about, like, in that young adults Bible study that we were in, we were reading through 1 Peter, and we were learning about, like, how it's our duty as believers to do everything that we can to live in peace with one another. Mm-hmm. And taking that responsibility on us, even if it wasn't our fault that something happened, like, taking that piece of saying, like, I did everything that I could to live in peace with these people. And so, like, I can walk in, like, the wholeness and, like, knowing that I did everything that the Lord asked of me to do in this.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and just even in all of that, like, you know, like when I heard you mention about like you didn't get the apologies, right? And I think that's why the Lord, he told us to forgive our enemies and forgive others. Like, was that 77 times 7? If I'm
70 times 7.
70 times 7. Hey, look, that's 77 times. That's crazy. But yeah. So yeah, with that though, like, you know, I think just kind of getting context of that, like he wanted us to understand and remember that there is going to be a lot of offenses that we're going to encounter. There are going to be a lot of hurt that we're going to encounter, right? And so forgiving the other person looks like not receiving an apology. Mm-hmm. And it also looks like you being healed too, right?
Yeah.
And how does that make sense? Well, let me tell you. So even if you didn't get that apology, the Lord he's still moving through you. He's still using you. And I think that's a blessing in itself, right?
For sure.
So I don't think that as much as it hurts, I think it's one of those things where it's like, in order for the Lord to use you, we have to leave that behind. Because if we're sitting here waiting on an apology for the next 5-10 years that we're never going to get, the Lord's sitting here waiting like, you know, you're looking at the apology that you're never going to get, and I'm sitting here waiting on you to use you to reach these people that's lost. Yeah. Right? And so, that's why we here today.
Yeah. One big thing that I remember the Lord, like, saying to me was, like, where are your eyes? And there's a passage in Scripture in the New Testament that talks about, like, I don't remember who it is. I think it's Peter, I want to say. And he's talking to Jesus, and he's like, but what about one of the other disciples? Like, I think he was talking about John. He was like, well, what about John? Like, what about him? And Jesus is like, as for you, you follow me. And, like, completely ignores the question. There were so many times that I was like, but Lord, like, what about them? Like, they're still sitting on a stage preaching the word of God after everything they did to me. Like, what about them? Like, why are they in the place that they're in? And the Lord is like, as for you, you follow me.
Right.
And, like, if your eyes aren't fixed on me, then you're not going to go where I'm taking you or where I'm trying to take you. And I think the other thing with forgiveness, too, because I think the biggest thing in church hurt as a believer that's still, like, fighting to stay in community and fighting to be a part of the bride, which I want to talk about that in a second, is forgiveness is essential. And they always say, like, forgiveness isn't for you, it's for them, or it's not for them, it's for you. I think that all can be true. It's for everybody involved. One of the biggest lessons that I learned about forgiveness was through the story of Joseph. And I've talked about it a couple times in the podcast, but that story really, like, wrecked me because Joseph, like, grew up with his brothers. He was considered the favorite. His brothers were jealous of him, so they sold him off into slavery, knowing that he was likely going to die. He ends up, like, living the rest of his life as a slave, and then he ends up finding favor as a slave, and then he ends up getting thrown in prison, and then he finds favor in the prison. And throughout all of that, years later, he ends up being in charge of all of the food while the land is, like, in a drought. They have no food. And so everybody has to come to the palace to be able to receive the food. And his brothers come, and they're, like, looking for food, and they don't even recognize him. And I think, like, it's oftentimes in our life after we've experienced some kind of church hurt, like, we feel like the people that were around us, the people that knew us, like, it's like they don't even recognize who we were anymore. And his brothers come. They didn't recognize him. They asked him for food. And he makes an entire feast for them and sits at the table with them and dines with them. And I saw, like, an example in that of what it looks like to love our enemies truly. Because like while they were his family, like they did terrible things to him. Like they sold him off. He was separated from his parents for the rest of his life. He was sold into slavery. He should have died. He ends up getting thrown into prison. He's accused of raping his boss's wife, and so like he goes through a really, really, really hard life, a life of suffering. And when they come and ask him for food, he makes a feast for them, which is not like our inclination. Is definitely not like to make a feast for the people that have hurt us the most. Right. But that's what our call to do is, like, to love our enemies looks like making a feast for those people and consistently saying, like, no matter what you've done to me, no matter what the circumstance is, like, you still have a seat at my table. And even like Jesus doing that with Judas, like, is very foreshadowing of that, of him still making a table for Judas, knowing and inviting him into the Last Supper, some of the most like intense and intimate moments of his life. He still invites Judas into that, knowing that Judas is a betrayer.
That's really true. It's really true. So yeah, I heard you mention the bride, right? So one of the questions was, how do you trust? Well, what does the bride even mean? So you want to answer that first, or you want me to go?
You can go.
Okay, all right. We 1 2 1 2. Okay. I love this woman, y'all. When I even with her was just talking, I'm just like, yeah, that's true. But do you know how much I love you, though? And my father is saying the same thing, so it's beautiful.
Oh,
yeah.
That was cute.
So what does the bride even mean? So I put, for me, someone significantly important that you will commit the rest of your life with or do life with. And you know what's funny is that, you know, back in the days, like, it was actually the groom walking down
really
to the bride. Like,
interesting.
Yeah, I didn't even know that. And so in that, I got the revelation. Mm-hmm. Jesus coming back to get his bride, right?
Talk to me, Pastor.
He's bringing it back to the old days. And it's an emotional thing.
Yeah.
It's a blessing. It's a new beginning.
Yeah.
And when I got that, I was like, oh, that's you coming back, like, you coming to get us, like, we need to be prepared, like, because you never see, if you notice, you never see a bride trying to get prepared at the wedding. She's already prepared, waiting on the groom, or vice versa. Because, you know, back in the day, the groom actually used to come back, you know, down the aisle. And so, but either way, you're a groom or a bride, you're always prepared, waiting for that person to come. Mm-hmm. And so, what does it look like today to be prepared, you think?
Yeah. I mean, I think, like, the most important thing of, like, the bride and the bridegroom is, like, it's a covenant. Mm-hmm. And, like, it's a covenant that the Lord made with us to dedicate his life to not just, like, wanting to be with us and wanting to know us, because that's when the truth is the garden. He's always wanted to be with us. He's always wanted to know us. But in that, making a covenant with us, sending his son to be here for us, to die on our behalf, to be able to seal that covenant in the same way that, like, a ring seals, like, a marriage. Him making that covenant with us for eternity, us acting as his bridegroom, like, we have to also say yes to that. We have to also show up. We have to also, like you said, prepare ourselves and, like, make sure that we're in right standing with the groom. And I think that a lot of times we can just, like, throw this the bridegroom, all this around. And I remember one of the biggest things that the Lord said at the beginning of this year was that I had to forgive the bride and forgive the church, or I wouldn't be a part of it. And I was in a really hard place with that, because I was like, forgiving the church means forgiving churches that have hurt me, forgiving organizations that have hurt me, leadership that's hurt me, pastors that have hurt me. Like, it's so much bigger than just, like, one person. Yeah. And the Lord told me, like, I remember so clearly, the Lord was like, to me, it's all one. Like, the bride is one, and the body operates as one body. And until you're ready to forgive one vessel of my body, you're not willing to forgive the entirety. Yeah. And if you can't forgive it, you can't be a part of it. And so I had to realize that, like, the state of what, like, the capital C church, like, all believers as a whole, where we're at currently is, like, I got this revelation earlier this year of, like, a bunch of amputated limbs just, like, laying on a ground. That all, when put together, when fit together, they make up the body of Christ. But because we have, like, the Catholics over here and the Baptists over there and the Pentecostals over here and the non-denominationals over here and this church over there, and you have the mega churches fighting for who has more people and who has more salvations. And because we're at that place, even, like, in the midst of the election, where so many believers are, like, on one side or the other and are like, you can't be a believer if you don't agree with the things that I agree with, when we allow the enemy to step in and do that, we're literally tangibly allowing him to cut off parts of the body, and amputate us. And like a finger can't operate without the rest of the hand, and the hand can't operate if it's not connected to the body because it doesn't have any receptions coming from the brain or the heart. It doesn't have like the whatever it's like the thing, the receptors, is that what it is? I don't know. And your brain.
I can pull up the scripture if you like.
I mean, you can. It's in 2 Corinthians. It talks about it. But essentially, like, we can't operate as a body if we're not operating together.
So one of the questions I wanted to know was, well, what can we do as a body of believers to help individuals who've experienced church hurt? And I have the answer for it, and I know you were just talking, so shall I go first?
Yeah, you can.
Okay. This is actually one of the questions I have for myself.
That's why I was like, I want to know what your response is, because I feel like I would give a response based off of like the things I've been through and what would have helped me at the time. Right.
And me, I'm just going to give the truth. I mean, I'll always like give references to like my experiences, but also the people, that may have not experienced what I've experienced, right? They also need to understand, certain things. And so what I mean by that is, like, I think us as body of believers, we have to come to a place where if we stop worried about trying to be seen in the church, or if we stop worried about trying to be in the front stage or serve in a high position or whatever, and we have these people in the congregation that's deciding if this might be their last church service, right, because of the experience they've had in the church, right? And that's just one example, but I can give many more. But I think we do have to come to a place as a body of believers, like we have to start engaging more with the individuals that we see on a Sunday basis, right? Just walking up to a person, hey, how you doing? And you just never know like what that conversation can lead to. And just like in all of that, like we get so caught up in the church where we want to be the next pastor or whatever position that serves at a higher level. Right. We want that position, but we don't want the cost of it, right?
Real.
But again, we're talking, our focal point is the church hurt people. Like, how do we bring them back into a place where they are accepted, they are loved, they are seen? Yeah. And
one thing I think the Lord really wrote on my heart this year was chasing after the one that was once a part of the 99. And I've always loved that passage where it talks about like the one chasing after the 99, or leaving the 99 for the one. But I think that in this year I really understood what that looks like is to chase after the one, to leave the 99 to chase after the one. Most of the time, that, not all the time, but I think oftentimes, especially in people that have been hurt by the church, that one that's running away from the flock was once a part of the 99. And I think the thing that's most important is like not forgetting the oneness of the one. And that's something that I think our local church has really emphasized and talked about that I really appreciate, as they like encourage us to look around and see the humanity of the person sitting next to us. And not just see them as like a person that comes to church that I see on a Sunday and I'm like, oh, hey, like, how are you? Like, good, how are you? And like, that's the end of the conversation, but like genuinely seeking to know and care for people. I think as someone that has been hurt by the church in multiple different scenarios or hurt by organizations or whatever the case is, I think the biggest thing that would have helped at the time is the people that loved me on Sundays when I was serving 24/7, that cared for me, that poured into me, that I had conversations with week in and week out. If they had cared that same amount when I wasn't serving, when I wasn't at the church 24/7, when I wasn't available, if they had showed they actually cared for me, the time of me running from the church probably would have been a lot shorter. And so I think that's the most important thing is like, what are we actively doing as believers to chase after that one?
Yeah, because we do live in a time right now where it's like serving is a big thing, and serving is important to, of course, serving is important, right? Serving is a big part of the local church. Like we find ourselves in a culture where we have to, we serving, right? But it's one thing, like, when you're serving, we have to be at a place where I'm serving the body of Christ, but then it's also, too, it's like we find ourselves with, it becomes a routine thing, like a routine on a Sunday, and what we do is we just come to church, we serve, and we go home, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, how can the Lord, like, what can we do to break that? And I think for me, like, for one, if I'm serving the body, I'm not looking for anything in return. But I will say that I still want to be, like, seen in a sense.
Yeah.
Not in a way of, like, trying to be on front stage.
Right.
When I say seen, I'm just saying, like,
To be known.
To be known, right?
Yeah.
To be known. And I think, like, we can serve, like, every Sunday, and someone still don't know your name. Nobody knows you.
Yeah.
And that just goes to one of those things where it's like we become a number, you know?
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Yeah. I think it's like sometimes we can get so caught up in the routine serving culture that I think sometimes getting so caught up in that, we just become a person that's filling a slot serving at a service. And that's not all the time, but I think that oftentimes you don't really know the person that's next to you. And I will say one thing that I've learned from you and really, like, loved seeing in you is the way that you, like, every time we're at church or something, you'll go and, like, talk to someone. Like, if I leave you because I'm talking to someone or catching up, like, I'll come back 5-10 minutes later and you'll be like, okay, so I met this guy, he's really cool, and you'll tell me, like, his whole life story. And, like, I think it's funny, but it's also, like, it shows me the intentionality of how much you actually care for people. And you care to get to know not only, like, who they are, but where they came from, what they're walking through currently, and how you can walk alongside of them. And, like, that's what the gospel looks like. Like, when Paul talks about discipleship, he doesn't talk about just, like, showing up on a Sunday, saying hi, checking in with people, preaching a sermon on a stage. Like, he says, like, to share the gospel is to share your life. And, like, I've seen you tangibly doing that. And I think, like, that's what, like, the last thing that Jesus asked us to do was the Great Commission, which is, like, go and make disciples of all nations. And, like, to make a disciple is not just to get people saved and get people believing in Jesus, and it's, like, to actually walk with these people, like, to have somebody walking with you every day, holding you accountable. Even last night we were at, like, a discipleship thing, and one of the guys was talking about how, like, he calls you almost every day and, like, blows up your phone about, like, things that are going on. He's expecting you to just, like, encourage him to go and punch the guy that he's fighting with or whatever, and, like, how you're helping him to understand in those moments what it looks like to be real. And what I also have loved about you is, like, you're not just, like, a one-sided person in that, and that, like, you're not just giving them advice for what they can do, but you're also sharing the hard things that you're walking through and sharing what the Lord is teaching you. So there's, like, a realness, there's a connection. It's, like, an actual relationship, not just, like, oh, I'm, like, your counselor that just listens to you and gives you advice and, like, never tells you anything about me. And so I really loved seeing you do that and, like, seeing you tangibly walking out, like, the Great Commission day in and day out.
Yeah. And it's actually, I'm glad we're on that, because one of the questions was, what is the role of the church or community supposed to actually look like? And I think you just answered that. And I'll say for me, like, the role of the church is supposed to be a place where they prepare you to prepare others. And I think that's the most simplest way I can put that.
That's really good.
Because, I mean, like, think about it. We're coming to church, and I know we get caught in the routine of coming to church, get my feeding, and then go back home and go sin or go do whatever we want to do. But what it's actually supposed to look like is back in the old days, in Acts, actually, where we're at our church right now.
The early church.
Early church days. And that's kind of what we're studying now. And I think that's a beautiful picture of what it actually looks like to go out, be discipled, and go out and make disciples. And if we get back to that, I really think that will be it'll go back to everything that we were talking about with the church, like all of that. We can really eliminate a lot of that stuff, or it can solve a lot of those problems if we just go out and make the disciples. Because what does that intentionally that looks like? Intentionally getting out there, getting to know someone, find out where they are, share where you are. Because remember, to discipleship, actually, it's a twofold. It's actually like a two-way mirror. Like, like, I'm discipling you, but I also want you to know where I'm at too. Because I don't want you to think that I'm this perfect person, this perfect statue, to where, like, I don't have any flaws or faults.
Right.
And, you're the only one that's going through this. Because how can we connect? By you knowing my faults and me knowing yours.
Right.
And that's how a great connection is supposed to work. Like, and if we get out there, and we don't have to, I gotta go get like 7 disciples, I gotta go find 7 people to disciple. No.
Yeah, it should be a natural thing. It should just be like friendships, and it should excite us. I think that one thing that I think about often is like, how do you recognize when you're in an unhealthy relationship with the church or when you're in an unhealthy church? And I think that the biggest thing is like when someone getting saved and discovering who Jesus is no longer exciting, you should evaluate the place that you're at, where your heart is at, and like where the root is coming from. Because I think that so often we can get so caught up in like the production and having things look perfect and having everything like the way that it's supposed to be and everything being so put together, like we lose the excitement of like somebody meeting Jesus for the first time. And I think that there's also this like we almost put ourselves on a pedestal after like being with the Lord for so long of like sometimes people are like, oh well, I've been with the Lord for 7 years and that person just got saved yesterday, and so like we can't like really be in friendship because they don't understand the things that I'm going through. And like we're all babies in terms of like the timeline of like heaven, right? And so like in the Lord's eyes, like they're just as saved as you are. Like if they're covered by the blood, they're just as saved as you are. And so like while you may have experience, like that experience should be shared, but there's also times where like the Lord does radical things in a quick amount of time. Like I've seen people in my life that have been with the Lord for 15 years and they're having revelations that someone that got saved last week are having. Like there's no like it's not like a corporate ladder that you climb when it comes to salvation.
It's an
like,
ongoing journey, right?
Yeah,
it's
we constantly are working out our salvation, and like just as somebody that got saved yesterday versus someone that's been saved for 15 years, like they're equally my brother or sister, and like I should be able to sit down and have community and be excited about community with either one.
Yeah. I mean, like you say, like it's supposed to be an ongoing journey, and a lot of times we get to a place where we feel like, oh, I know the Lord. I've been knowing the Lord for, like you say, 7 years or however many plus years, and then we get comfortable and we think, okay, that's it. And it's a very dangerous place to be, because if we get to a place like that, it's kind of more so of like we tend to let pride creep in, and we allow that to look at people in a different way or looking down on people. And one thing for me, like I always want to practically like share with you guys on where I'm at too. Like even with me, like I still like struggle sometimes with just like like not knowing my place in the kingdom, and that's just me being vulnerable with you guys, and she can attest for me. Like I'm always like open to where I'm at, right? And sometimes I don't even have to tell you because you already know.
The Lord be telling me His secrets.
Yeah, and so I can't do nothing, y'all. But anyway, but no, like on a serious note though, I think like I don't some days I struggle with not knowing my place in the kingdom, and so like I think that's one of those things where I run back to the Lord, and I think if we find a place where we have to like He positions us where we have to always constantly run back to Him, then that we won't allow pride and things like that to creep in, because we constantly having to depend on Him. Because think about it, if you've been with the Lord 8 years and we ain't really seen no fruit bear, like I mean, what can you say you've done, or how comfortable can we be with not bearing fruit? But we've been with the Lord 7 years, and the Lord's sitting over here like, you've been with me 7 years, but I ain't been with you. I ain't heard from you. I don't know what and so like talk to me, like and so. And one thing I do appreciate, since we're giving each other flowers today.
Ooh, I love flowers. Well, actually,
you hate flowers,
but
you like these flowers that I'm about to give you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sidebar. But anyway, one thing I do appreciate you is that you constantly like just make sure that I'm in a space where I'm always running to the Lord. Like you encourage me to run to the Lord. Like you encourage me to get in my word, and which I do, but I think it's one of those things where it's like, oh no, you need more Jesus today. And
I did tell him that the other day.
And so like, and
he was like, I did my Bible study at 6 a.m. I was like, I think you need some more Jesus today.
And you know what, and since we're on this topic too, like I had found a Instagram post the other day when I was waiting on you to come out from your mom's church. And
you're not waiting on me. Go ahead.
Oh, we're not supposed to say that?
You made it sound like I'm just like, you just wait on me all the time. Like,
hey, I waited on the Lord for you. What's wrong with me waiting on you to come out to church?
Okay, make it all spiritual. Go ahead.
But anyway,
Instagram.
But Instagram, yeah. So I saw a post, and the guy was like, he asked the Lord, what does it mean to be, what is the difference between being a part of my life and you being the center of my life? And what he said was, and man, like it freed me. He said, me being a part of your life is you adding me to a schedule that you already have. But being in the center of your life, you can't move without me. Like you,
That's
the
good.
decisions you make throughout your day, if you don't run to me first before you already decide to run to a friend or to your own conscience to know like, oh, I'm going to choose this, then I'm just a part of your life. Because being a part of your life, remember, a friend is a part of your life. You know, like you can call them at any time you want, right? You have control over when you want to talk to them, right?
Right.
But someone being in the center of your life, oh, you can't move without that person. Like you can't live without that person. And I think for me, like when I heard that, it was like, man, like how many times do we add God to our routine, but how many times also do we allow him to interrupt our routine?
Yeah. That's
and
good.
and I was on my way here, honestly, I was on my way here today. And I was just asking the Lord, you know, however you want to interrupt the day, go ahead. And the reason why I was intentional about that prayer, because where I'm at right now in this season, I've always been in a rush. I'm in a rush. I'm always on the go. And she's always telling me too, like, you know, I got to slow down. Like even with my son Kyrie, like I be missing moments with him in the car. It's just little silly moments or little cute moments because I'm always trying to get to destination 1 or destination 2. And I think I've been asking the Lord, like, just help me slow down. Help me slow down to see. Help me slow down to hear you speak. Because if I'm always, because the devil wants you to rush. He wants you to, you know, rush and everything because you're missing the moments that he doesn't want you to see. And so that was one of my intentional prayers. It has been one of my intentional prayers lately.
That's good.
And so, yeah.
That's really good. Yeah. I think I was telling you yesterday that I'm reading through Exodus, and I'm rocking it with Moses. But I was reading how when the Israelites were wandering in the wilderness, and they were like yelling at Moses because they were like, we have no food. And so he went and prayed, and the Lord was like, I'm going to give them food every day. They have to go and collect it. And I was reading about how like their instructions were like not to take over any leftovers for the next day, but like to get enough for just enough for that day. Sorry. And in reading that, I was talking about like some of them didn't listen at first and they took leftovers for the next day, but when they did that, the food for the next day was rotten, it had maggots in it, and like it wasn't edible. And I remember the Lord saying in that moment, like, I need you to come to me every day for the daily bread that I've provided for you. I've already laid it out and it's ready for you. But like you can't save your revelations from today for tomorrow because they'll be rotten, they'll be bitter, and they won't be the same. And so I've thought about like how many times in my life have I lived on a revelation of 7 days ago, a revelation from 2 years ago, and I've like taken that and made that become my daily bread and made that enough when the Lord was asking me for more. And he also was saying like when he put that food out every day and gave just enough for that day, A, it was intended to be just enough for that day, but B, if I don't go out and pick it up that day, I miss that. And I may never get that revelation back. And so, like, in those moments of the Lord being like, it's 3 o'clock in the morning and I can't sleep, and the Lord's like, I'm trying to talk to you. And I'm like, I want to sleep. If I don't be obedient to that, like, I may miss out on a word that I'll never get again.
Yeah.
And so I was just, like, meditating on, like, how important it is. Like, sometimes it is out of rhythm and sometimes he is spontaneous. But the intentionality of our Father to put that bread out for us to receive, it requires our obedience of going out and gathering that word.
Yeah, because we can't live off old bread, like an old season, walking into a new season, right? Like we can't do the same thing we've done 2 years ago into this year, right?
Yeah, and I've tried.
Yeah, and it's one of those things, like even like you know, we're coming to an end of this year, right? And so like for me, like,
it's crazy. It's Christmas.
I know we're getting close.
Jingle bell, jingle bell, jingle bell rock.
Our favorite holiday, actually. I was gonna say hers, but I'll say it's really ours.
Yeah, I think
we
I
can
love
skip
it more.
over Thanksgiving because really,
I love it more though.
I mean, I'm thankful, but
I love it more.
we love it more.
I love it
We
more.
love it more.
I love it more.
We love it more. It's a we thing now. It's we. Oh, that's going on? Okay. All right. You know what? Actually, yeah, we can keep that. We keep that because I want them to see the glow up, you know.
The glow up.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
But anyway, but yeah, like I was just, that was one of my prayers too. I'm telling y'all all my prayers, but this is what it looks like, y'all, like being transparent and vulnerable.
Share your life.
I think like, so lately it's been one of those prayers, like, you know, we're coming to an end of the year and I'm like, Lord, like, whatever instruction you want to give me, Lord, like, I just don't want to find myself in the same position I was this year or next year. And so if that means stretching me, if that means me dropping something off or picking something up, have it your way. Like, let it be your will, not mine. And, you know, like, that's a dangerous prayer too, because now it's like you're telling the Lord, like, hey, like, it's your turn. It's not my turn anymore. I've tried to make it my turn all my life. It's finally you have it your way.
Yeah.
And a lot of us struggle with that sometimes because we want it a certain way. We want our timeline to look a certain way, right? We want a certain job. We want a certain career. We want a certain amount of money in the bank account.
Mm-hmm.
And but it's just one of those things where it's like the Lord is looking at us and like, I have all that for you, but I mean, like, what do I look like? I wouldn't be a great father giving it to you, and I know it's going to destroy you because you haven't even been in my presence, or even you haven't even gotten the instruction I've been waiting to give you, but you've been so caught up in busyness and all that. And that's why I said, like, for me, I have to slow down because I'm missing on the things that the Lord is trying to show me or tell me. And even with you, like, like we're always on the go, and yes, we have been busy a lot, and we have a lot more coming, but I think it's just one of those things where it's like I have to sit and reflect on what he has done,
right?
And I need instruction even for this season sometimes, like a lot, because I can't, like you said, we can't go off of old bread. Like we have to get daily bread. That's why he said give us our daily bread. It has to be a renewed thing every day. And so that's kind of where I'm at right now with that. And I mean, we need that to kind of push forward and get what he's called us to get to. So.
Well, I think it's that same, like, new wine doesn't fit in old wineskins. And if you try to put new wine in old wineskins, the wineskins often they'll break apart at the seams. And sometimes, like, when we do try to fit that new wine into old wineskins, it does break apart at the seams, and that's why we lose things. And so instead of doing that, like, operating out of obedience of, like, Lord, what do you want me to do today? Which is something, like, the biggest thing I think that the Lord has been showing me in this year is, like, waking up every day and being like, Lord, what do you want me to do today? There's been a lot that I've lost in this year. There's been a lot of things that I thought that I would have forever that I didn't have any question of going back to old places, or just like losing things that I never thought would be a part of the process. But the Lord has consistently been like, I'm doing a new thing, and the thing that I'm doing doesn't fit in the old wineskins. And that can be hard sometimes, but shedding those old wineskins can also be a beautiful thing, a painful process, but a really beautiful thing, and allowing him to do a new thing. We were at church last night, and they were asking, like, if we feel like we have a community or we're looking for a community or what the case is. And I said, honestly, I feel like both can be true because I think I do have a community of people, and I have a family that surrounds me and supports me, and I'm really grateful for that, but I also believe that the Lord is doing a new thing. And sometimes the people that were in my life before, like, may not be able to walk into a new season with me because they aren't at the place where they're willing to go to the depth that the Lord is trying to take me. And so,
I mean, like, again, like, there is going to be some things that we have to leave behind, old friendships, like old patterns, because that's a big thing, patterns, that we're so caught up in a pattern and a routine, and the Lord's trying to break that. Like, he can't do a new thing if he can't break the routine, that you're in right now. And that's one of the prayers, like I said, I mentioned earlier, that I want the Lord to do. It's just come in and do a new thing, because I'm asking for things, but I want to allow him to do a new thing. And so, and in all of that, him giving me a new, or doing a new thing in our lives, or in my life, your life, or whoever.
Our life.
Well, I'm speaking to the audience too, so I want to include them too. That's why me, you, or them.
Our life.
Our life or their lives. Yeah. I'm funny. Yeah, I pulled a you on you. That's funny.
You're funny, babe.
Well,
you make me laugh.
I didn't want it to fall on you. But anyway,
Thank you
but yeah, so, but in him doing a new thing, it's like he has so much more of for us on the other side, and more than we could ever, think or imagine. And so, like, we just gotta let it go. We just
on Ephesians 3:20.
Hey, I mean, I'm just saying we gotta let some things go. Like, we have to understand, like, and I'm not saying this is easy. I'm walking through this now, like. Like, she could tell you, or, I tell you myself, like, there's nothing here to hide. Like, I am, like, the Lord is stretching me in this season, and even in being here today, like it's a stretch. Like we're being stretched every day. I mean she's sick right now. And we're still here. We're still
And I
doing
guarantee you, watch, tomorrow I'll be perfectly fine.
Yeah.
I won't even be sick anymore.
Yeah, but like I said,
Get behind me, Satan.
But we still have things that the Lord has called us to do and that He wants us to do, and reaching His people and service people, and so I mean that's
press
what I
on
think.
to the finish line.
Press on.
Yeah.
It's what it says, a marathon.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a marathon, not a sprint.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't like running.
You don't like running? Yeah, she don't like running. We haven't did a run in a while. I mean, a walk in a while either.
I'm sick.
Oh no, I know. But hey, you know what? Even in walk, what I have learned this year though, like even in walks, like the Lord has spoken. Like I remember I did a fast that time when I was walking with my best friend, and
when you first started talking.
Yeah, and
when you were fasting because you didn't know if the Lord wanted you to be with me. Yeah.
That was it, because I thought it was something.
You're trying to hear and make sure that the Lord. Well, you're both fasting.
Yeah, but
I just made it.
That was the day I went to Herman Park, though. Was it that same time?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think the first day.
Because we went to Herman Park that next week.
Yeah, but like I said, even in like I said, just walks. Like the Lord can speak to us any kind of way through walks, and I think walking is really good. Because the Lord has spoken to me plenty of times, gave me a new instruction, a new thing, and so.
Well, your brain also works like. If you've ever heard of EMDR therapy, I'm not going to get into it because it's a whole soapbox, but your brain works better when you're going back and forth like that. So walks can be a really good time for you, for thinking, for talking, for spending time with the Lord and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, but, so, how was your week? How has your week been?
I'm under attack, but it's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all I got to say. I need some coffee.
Yeah.
How's your week been?
At first it started off pretty. I was just tired. I had been tired lately. And so I finally got the rest I needed yesterday or last night. After the prayer I received, I was like, oh, woke up this morning, I felt refreshed. Has time with the Lord this morning, and
that's so good.
And that's what it is, like, because if the enemy can't get you, when you're full of energy, he'll get you when you're tired for sure. Like, he'll make you tired. Like he'll make you sick. He'll make you sick. He'll try to do any and everything to get you, to slow you down from your purpose and the things that God called you to do. And so, I just finally I finally got the rest I needed last night, and. So yeah.
My nails look really good.
Your nails? Yeah, it's Thanksgiving is approaching, so she had to get brown nails. So hey.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
Yeah, I appreciate you.
Amen.
Yeah.
Praise God.
Amen.
Hallelujah.
Yeah.
Won't He do it?
Yeah.
That's all for today, folks.
That's all for today.
Thanks for joining us.
All right, y'all. So it's we had a great time with y'all, and we'll see y'all next week.
Thanks for hanging out with us.
Yep.
Love you guys. We'll see you guys next week. And we'll meet you guys outside the camp. Bye, guys.
Bye.